Hi everybody, it's Amy and Maggie and we're back with another review, this time of Borealis Arctic Expeditions, which is by Dariusz Minder and Lucky Duck Games. And this game came out of nowhere for us. It came out of nowhere. In fact, when you look at the cover, you know, no disrespect, but it kind of is a game that blends a little bit into the background. When we received this, which is a review copy, it was kind of like, oh yeah, it looks like it'll be like, it kind of gives off like cozy vibes, something that might be very like accessible, very straightforward,
like a lightweight kind of puzzle sort of thing. A
lightweight kind of animal focused game. And so, you know, there's a lot of those, but this one struck us as quite different and intriguing from the very first time we played it. So we want to tell you all about it. So let's get into it.
So in Borealis Arctic Expeditions, we are leading a group of scientists in the Arctics who are going to be taking photographs and kind of documenting all these different animals and different species. As we're doing this, they're going to be moving around and going into different locations and different camps, and so it's very much about trying to make sure that we have the people that we need with the particular skills that we need in the right place at the right time, and hopefully capturing the right animal with the right vehicle to get us there. So there's actually going to be a fair bit of things going on in what on the surface might look like just like a huge exploration type game.
Now, this game has got to be one of the crunchiest puzzles that I've played this year. And it's really interesting in how it comes together. So as Maggie alluded to, you're going to have all of these different scientist types, and when you start the game there are 3 columns, and at the top of each of these columns are one of each type of scientist. So there's 3 different colors of scientists, and that's what you're going to need to be able to move around when you play an animal card down on top of that column. So every card requires that you move 2 scientists. So when you play it to the top of the column, it might say, okay, you're going to move a green one to the left and you're going to move a pink one to the right. And so you have to physically move those scientists left and right, which of course changes their location and thereby opens up what you have available to you at the column that's next door. So in that example now, if that happened on the left column, in the middle column I now have an extra pink, which means that maybe I can play a card into the middle column that has 2 pink workers. One's going to move left and one's going to move right. And now all of a sudden I've got the pink one back in the left-hand column. And so this is the crux of the puzzle. It's trying to program out the placement of your cards in order to make sure you have what you need where you want to place the animal. But it's more complex than that. And it's more complex than that because there's a vehicle that is shown at the bottom of each card. And so when you play it down, if that vehicle matches the next vehicle in order at the bottom of the column, you're going to be able to move your flag down. And that's going to generate victory points for you at the end of the game. And what else dictates where you want to play cards? The animals that are printed on them. So there are 5 different types of animals in this game. And to begin with, in the base game, or the thing that is always scored, is getting the same type of animal in each of those columns is going to give you more and more points the more animals that you have at the end of the game. But that is further complicated by the objectives in this game. Now, you know I love a race objective, and in this game there are 3 randomized race objectives that are going to increase that variability, but they're going to relate to the things that you want to get done across these different columns of animals that you have. For example, you might want to have horizontally the same animal in all 3 columns at the same level. And so that is obviously going to mess with how you're going to get things done. Not to mention the game will instantly end when someone has 7 cards in one column. So you're also thinking about how to balance the 3 columns as well. So you've got these 3 race objectives, and then you have 2 end game variable objectives as well.
Scoring objectives,
So you're thinking about so much here. You've got to play the right card with the right workers in the spot, or the scientists, sorry, and then you're trying to match it with the vehicles, and then you've got 5 objectives that you're trying to complete.
And 3 of them are a race. So if it doesn't, if any one particular player, as you also call them, completes that objective, then that's the round that it has to be completed by everyone. Whoever doesn't get to jump in on that round, that's it. It's done. So you're like, oh no, I was working my way through it, and I'm not going to be able to. So yeah.
And so at the end of the game, it's really just a point salad. You're going to just tally up all the points that you've got across those 5 objectives, and your columns with the flags, and your same groups of animals in each column, and then the person with the most points wins. But obviously, as I've been explaining this, I've been talking to you about the conundrums that come up in this game. So I'm just going to go straight into talking about how we feel about it. You can probably already see through my enthusiasm that this is a surprisingly challenging puzzle. Now, the first time we played this game, Maggie taught the game, and she taught it to Tarrant of Meeple University. And if you've met Tarrant, if you watched his videos, he is into very complex games as well.
Yeah.
And when we were playing this, him and I were just like, this is like tickling parts of our brain that we didn't expect it to going in. And it is really hard with the hand management. So in this game, you're always going to have 4 cards in hand that you can choose from to place in these columns. But then every time you play one, you're going to draw back up. And that in and of itself is a really hard thing to puzzle out, because you're trying to sequence what you're going to be able to do. So, okay, when I put my 3rd card down, the workers are going to look like this. And so I'll be able to play it in this column, and then they'll shift. And then what's the 4th card?
And also the synergy of and I wanted to have this vehicle ideally with this combination of workers, and ideally this animal, and ideally, so it's just like,
And so it feels like, on the face of it, like a hand management game, but really I got a feeling like a programming game, like trying to think ahead as many cards as you can in order to optimize your puzzle.
Yeah, for me it was one of those, as we were playing, because I learned that it's just this thing of now I've learned it doesn't matter how much you read a rule book and how many games you've played, you can't get a sense of the game until you start playing it. And when I read it, it's okay, all of this makes sense. We start playing it, and I'm like, why am I stressed? I like that sense of tension, and the wait a second, I can't do everything that I want. And kind of every multi-layer puzzle, like a Calico style, it's you could just go, I'm just gonna focus on this one layer and then keep it at that. But the more you push yourself, the more you're like, or you're like a harmonies type thing where you're like, I want everything, but I can't. So
my favorite type of puzzle. And I just found it really addictive in terms of every time I play, I'm like, let's play again. And then when we stopped playing, I'm still thinking about it. And it's very abstract.
It is, yeah. So when you actually start playing it out, it's got the cute, it's some of the cute illustrations. And I sometimes find myself going,
I didn't even notice the illustrations. At one point, Maggie pointed out this cute little, I think they were bears.
They're cuddling. I was like,
She's like, oh, that's so cute. And I realized that I hadn't even noticed the art.
It's there's illustrations on these guys.
Yes, because you're so focused on the icons that you need to get things done. I completely blanked the illustrations, which are very beautiful. But the focus of the game, because it's really this
there's no time. There's no mental bandwidth to spend on the cute photos.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of mental bandwidth, what we found to be an interesting dynamic at this game is it does scale well, so it plays well at 2, 3, and 4. But in a 4-player game, you actually have more time to think through, okay, if that card is still there in the market when it comes around to my turn, that would be the perfect next card in my sequence. So I'm going to play a card and then I'm going to draw that back up. And what happens in a 2-player game is it actually gets slowed down by the fact that you haven't had time to think through your entire move. And so you play your card, maybe that's the easy one, but then I felt quite pressured because Maggie's already taking her turn and I haven't even drawn back up yet because you don't have quite enough thinking time. So the turns are really snappy, which makes it good for a 4-player game. But in a 4-player game, it's also just enough time to think through more of your moves, or I found that to be more ideal.
Yeah, it's interesting because it works perfectly well at 2, but you either, so if you have particularly a mismatch, I'm more of an intuitive player where I'm like, I'm going to try this, and then it's I'll take my turn, and my turn will be really quick, and Amy's like, no, I'm trying to optimize, I need to program out
thinking ahead,
the next 3 cards that I'm going to play down. The other thing that I found really interesting with this is one of the options that you have is to regroup your scientists, because eventually they'll end up on the edges of the board in the camps, and then to bring them back from the camps, it's sort of this kind of downturn where it allows you to refresh your hand if you want, and then also get points for all the scientists that ended up on the sides of the board. But then you have to group them all. They all come back and they all have to go into one location. So it's that thing of where are we going to put all of them that then when I start kind of doing my distribution is going to work out. So there's just,
but
layers
that's actually a really clever scoring mechanic because it's rewarding you for having optimized as much as possible to get all of your scientists onto the edges, because you get 1 point per worker that you're bringing back into that space. And so if you've spent more turns than other people before you've had to do that regroup function, you're going to get more points.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you're not also spending more downtime collecting those workers back as well. So it kind of rewards you in two different ways, which I like, because it rewards the optimization.
Yeah, we also have had games where like one of the scoring conditions at the end is to actually have a lot of scientists, like as many scientists as you can in those edges of the camps. And so it's that timing thing of like, oh, do I regroup? I don't want to regroup. Is someone about to finish the game, or am I about to like play the final card? And so in those scoring objectives really do change the focus from game to game. So with all of that, is there anything that you feel that you would change about this game?
It's interesting because this game is such an abstract game with different levers to pull. And I think that some people are going to be wired towards that and others are going to be bored by it very quickly. And it's the unique combination of the objectives that create this like ideal optimization of an abstract puzzle combined with programming. And so it's very in your head. So it's not really a game where there's lots of banter going on, but the race objectives make it very interactive in a hyper competitive way. And so it's an energy that I like in games, but I'm not sure but I don't know how to change that, because actually it's a very abstract puzzle. Like I can imagine what the prototype looked of this and then thinking, how can we like paste a theme onto this? How can we paste a theme onto this to make it like...
Yeah, you could probably make this into any other sort of theme. And that would be my thing is, well, one, it doesn't feel very thematic beyond like, oh, I'm moving my sign, but it's like, why? No reason. And why these colors? No reason.
It could be any colors, it could be anything, really.
But then when I was thinking, it's like, how would you, or why, like, could you make this more thematic? I was like, I don't know if you would really, because there's still really so much kind of going on that then I don't know if a thematic layer would just make it even too complicated. I thought like a lot of nature games that you'll have a little fun fact or a bit of trivia about particular animals or about particular things that happen in nature on the cards, but again there's so little bandwidth, and it's not like there's like a lot of downtime unless you're playing a 2-player game actually and you're playing with someone that's trying to optimize everything. Then I'd be like, oh, did you know that? It's like I would have the time to take that in. I don't know if it needs it. I think one main thing that I would change is I don't know why this didn't come with a solo mode.
I'm surprised by that too.
It seems like a game that there's no reason why it couldn't have a fairly simple, straightforward solo mode. Even in the multiplayer, you can refresh the market by spending a point. So the market is getting there's opportunities for refreshing aplenty. And I guess it would just be that in a way of getting rid of the objectives.
Timing out the race objectives.
So it'd be very easy. So I'm surprised that they didn't.
I am too, because it is a very abstract puzzle, and people like to have levels of challenge in puzzles like that. So I'm a little bit surprised by that.
So this is another telltale sign of this. It's like if it was a thematic game that I'm like, I just can't get enough of, I usually would go and like I'll try and hack a solo. But with this, it's like the more I kind of played it, the more it's like this is again, it's sort of, I was excited by how like surprisingly crunchy it was. But then it's like, well, now I feel like even though the objectives and the scoring stuff kind of changes, I'm abstractly doing the same thing over and over. So it's like my enjoyment sort of teetering. So I would not spend any time hacking a solo for this myself, but I can see how, someone that thinks more like you, not you because you don't play solo, would love this with a solo mode.
Okay, so straight into our ratings. If you can't tell already, I really think this is quite a clever puzzle. In the same way that the first time I played Harmonies, I thought that was a very clever puzzle. So for that reason...
Yes, I'll reserve my judgment, yes.
Okay, I am going to give it an 8. I think it belongs to sit in the shelf next to the Calico, the Harmonies in my collection.
So it's staying. It's
for me, it's
shelf-worthy.
staying.
Okay,
I'm not sure how much longevity I'll get out of this game, but it is just such an easy teach with such a big puzzle payoff and the intensity of the competition that as you get better at this game, like it gets tighter and tighter. I really like it. I've been thinking about it so much, and to me that is the marker of a good puzzle game. It was like when I played Harmonies, and we covered it in a 10 out of 10, and then we decided to do a full video on it because I literally couldn't stop thinking about this game, and I was teaching everybody. This has that impact. Yes, I'm not as into the theme and the artwork on this one. I think that this one does come across far more abstract. But for me, it's like enough to have this really unique puzzle.
That's what I was going to say before when I was like, I need to bite my tongue. It's because Harmonies manages to do something that could have been a very abstract puzzle in a very thematic way. Because it's like even the link of the type of animal and type of habitat you need to create and all, like that is all super, super clever. And also just like, you know, the colorful and the brightness. So for me, this is probably going to sit like, it was probably higher when we first started and it's sort of been coming down. At the moment, I would say it's probably like 7.6 for me. So it's a game that I enjoy when I'm playing. I keep saying, why am I so stressed? But the good kind of stress as I'm playing. But yeah, it's like the more I play it, the more it's like, well, the abstractness is sort of making it less enticing for me.
I just think it's really clever. I've said that 100 times, but I really would encourage you, if you enjoy puzzle games, to try this game out. It really surprised me in all the best ways. I do think it is actually harder than like a Harmonies level game. I think it's quite challenging to do well at this game, and if you enjoy that like brain stimulation of a good puzzle, check out Borealis. If you enjoyed this review, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now. Bye!